Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to University of Manitoba's Homecoming 2021. My name is Rosalind Daly, and I'm a member of the Alumni Relations team. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you for joining us and making this event part of your day. I am delighted to introduce your presenter, Matt Purdey, a University of Manitoba Bachelor of Arts grad from the class of 2013. Matt is a career development practitioner and certified career and work-life strategist based in Winnipeg. Through his work with nonprofit organizations, post-secondary institutions, and private clients, Matt has helped over 1,500 job seekers, including students and recent grads, take control of their careers. So over the next hour, Matt's going to share some tips and strategies with us on how to stand out in a job search. Welcome, Matt.
Good afternoon, Rosalind. Thanks for the invitation, and good afternoon to all the students who made time in their day to come join and listen to me. Thank you. I will start by loading up my screen, and if I could just get a quick audio video check to make sure people can see and hear me okay, that would be fantastic. Can everybody see the slide okay?
Yep, that's sharing.
Perfect, thanks, Teddy. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much again for taking time out of your day to come listen to me talk for the next hour about how to stand out in job search. I hope you're enjoying Homecoming 2021 and are taking part in as many of these virtual or on-campus events as you can. If I remember back to my days in university, fortunately, I was not navigating a pandemic at the time, and really, relished and enjoyed those on-campus exchanges and opportunities that were scheduled. So, thank you for being here, and yes, I hope to contribute to a positive homecoming week for everybody. So, over the next hour, my plan is to talk about how to stand out in job search. And if I do my job well, I'm hoping to provide you with a number of actionable strategies that you can take forward as you think about life after university or after your studies. So there will be time at the end for questions and answers, but I am also monitoring the chat. So if you have a question about something being presented on the screen, please put it in there and I'll do my best to answer those sort of live and in the moment. But if there's a question that I'll be answering later or is coming up, might be saved better for a later moment, then I'll do that as well. But we have different options available to us here. So I'd like to start with just a quick introduction. As Rosalind said, my name is Matt, and I am a University of Manitoba alumni. But my story is not what I would call the conventional one. So I first attended the University of Manitoba in September of 2001, 20 years ago. And when I started the university, I thought I had everything figured out. High school came to me pretty easy. I did well in school, and I thought university was going to be more of the same. Interestingly, I really didn't know what I wanted to do for work. And so I found university a little bit challenging in the beginning because all my teachers and parents and adults in my life were asking me, what are you going to study? What are you going to be? And I didn't know how to answer that question. So I did University 1, like a good student. I went to university and did University 1, but I actually stretched it out into 2 years because I just couldn't make up my mind. And after those 2 years, I was still in an uncertain place. So I actually dropped out. I left the university in 2003 and bought a one-way ticket to the other side of the world. I lived the next 10 years in Jakarta, Indonesia, and traveled Southeast Asia, exploring the world, finding out about myself, learning about my values and about cultures and just everything the world had to offer. But I also found out that I enjoyed certain aspects of the work I was doing over there, which was teaching English. I learned about the skills like facilitation and coaching and mentorship and teaching and education. And when I returned to Canada in 2013, I wanted to try and find work that would allow me to utilize those skills. And through a series of fortunate, random, and unfortunate events, I ended up landing a job as a career coach. And over the last 15 years, I have, used this experience in in language, educational, and vocational guidance to support people in their journeys through education and into the world of work. So I did eventually go back to the university and finish my degree. But I have since then, I've really focused on career development and helping people like me figure things out for themselves and conduct an effective job search and help them stand out in job search. So now I can confidently say that my mission or my purpose with the work I do is to help people understand and apply best practices in job search so they can search smarter, perform better, and just take control of their career. All things that I desperately needed help with back in 2001. So that's a little bit about me. There's more to that story, but I'll save that for another session. In terms of today's talk, I have 3 items on the agenda. The first one, we will just start with a discussion about the job market, because there's a key difference in the job market that I want to explain and I want you to understand. Then we'll take a look at different strategies you can use to stand out in a job search. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some Q&A at the end. Okay, so a short list, but there's a lot to get through. Let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is understanding the job market. And to help illustrate this point, I often use the iceberg analogy. You've probably seen this in some of your courses. The idea is, commonly used, but basically the idea here is that an iceberg is quite large. And if you ever see one floating by the coast or floating through the ocean, the part that's above the water is actually a very small piece of the actual iceberg. The majority of it is under the water and not visible to us. So we're going to use this iceberg analogy to talk about the job market. And the 2 parts of the job market that I'm going to talk about are what's called the open job market and the hidden job market. But I'm going to start with the open job market. So we call this the open job market for some obvious reasons. One, these jobs are publicly available. These are the type of opportunities you see posted online, in shop windows, on billboards, or anywhere that you can easily see them. Now, because they're publicly available, they're typically easy to find, right? You don't have to invest a lot of time or effort in uncovering these opportunities. You can get online, you can see them when you're out and about during the day, and they're quite visible. I'd also say that they, require very little effort to apply. Usually it's pretty straightforward. Fill out an online application, submit your resume, apply within. So really there's not a huge amount of effort or a number of steps required to submit your application. And it's also safe to assume that because a company is advertising, they've posted this opportunity publicly, that you can be employed relatively quickly. They have a need and they want it filled. So these are what I would call the advantages to focusing on the open job market. There are some advantages to it. However, there are also some disadvantages or some challenges that you need to be mindful of. The first is that the open job market really represents a small fraction of the opportunities that are actually available in the job market. Just like the iceberg, we can only see a small piece of it above the water, but there's much more to it under the surface. And the same goes for the job market. For every job you see online, there are probably many more that are not advertised anywhere. The second disadvantage here is that there's really no relationships involved. You know, you're a resume, you're an email, you're a stranger who's walked in off the street. So it's hard for employers to simply trust the things you say on your resume or the claims you make in your application. Because there's no relationships involved, trust is low. And therefore, employers ultimately have to take a leap of faith. And, you know, yes, they'll hire somebody who's submitted an online application, but they really don't know this person. They don't actually trust them 100% yet. And the last disadvantage to the open job market is there's a lot of competition. So because these ads are publicly available and easy to find, everybody applies for them. So, you know, the numbers vary, but for one online job posting, an employer could receive anywhere from 50 to 250 applications or more, depending on the organization and the role. So there's a lot of competition involved. Now, am I saying that you should ignore the open job market altogether? No. But what I'm really saying is this is one part of the job market. You can still invest some time here, but what I often find is students and graduates are focusing the majority of their time here. And if you want to stand out in your job search, my advice would be to try and explore the hidden job market a little bit more. See if you can adjust your job search strategies to focus a little bit more on this side of it. Why? Well, because there are several advantages. First of all, there's way more opportunities. Like I said earlier, for every job you see online, there could be 4 or 5 or more postings that are not advertised. The other advantage is that these positions are filled through relationships. It's through networking, through referrals, through recommendations, through friends and colleagues and family members. When an employer already has a relationship with you, when they trust you, when they know how you work, when they have a sense of your soft skills already, it makes the hiring decision so much easier. The other thing is, you know, not many people are focused on this side of the job search. There's not as much competition. So you can do yourself a huge favor by decreasing the amount of time you spend online job boards and focusing more on that relationship-based approach. Now, there are some disadvantages or some challenges associated with the hidden job market. These include the fact that these jobs are not publicly available. I can't send you a link to a website with hidden job market jobs. That would not exist. So because they're not publicly available, they are harder to find. You need to put in a little bit more effort. You need to talk to people. You need to connect with them online, in person. You need to go beyond first level connections and start to explore second or third level connections. So yes, there is some effort required. And the last thing about this is that yes, relationships take time. So unlike the open job market where you can be employed fairly quickly, it takes some time to build relationships here. Once those relationships are established and the trust is earned, then you can secure work fairly quickly. But that initial investment in building the relationship takes some time. So there you have it. That's the explanation of the open and hidden job markets. What I normally find is that students and young professionals spend probably 80% or more of their time focused on the open job market and maybe 20% on the hidden job market. And while it might not happen overnight, I would encourage you to realign your priorities and hopefully flip that around so that 80% of your job search is focused on the hidden job market and maybe 10 or 20% focused on the open. So, okay. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. I hope that clarifies things for people and gives you a new sense of direction with your job search strategy. So speaking of job search strategies, what are some ideas that you can use to stand out in job search? So whenever I sit down with a student or a young professional, and I ask them, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing in your job search to land your next job? They usually have a few ideas that they're working on. And so I'm gonna present them in a graphic or visual form. Now, full disclosure, I don't have any like hard stats or data to back this up. This is more like anecdotal, but I think it illustrates my point pretty clearly. So there are usually 3 or 4 things that people think gets them hired. And they usually ascribe different significance, or they'll pay differing amounts of attention to each of these things. And by far the first or the most common answer I get is, I need help with my resume, right? And they put a lot of weight on that. They think they need this perfect resume to land a job. And I say, okay, yes, resumes are important. What else are you working on? And they say, well, I should probably have a cover letter. Yes, you should probably have a cover letter, but they don't really think it's that important. And I say, okay, good. Like, what else are you doing? And they say, well, everybody tells me I should network. Yes, we should be networking, but they don't really know how, or maybe they're intimidated by the idea of meeting new people, and pandemic complicates things. So not as much as maybe they should. And I say, okay, good. Like anything else you're working on? And they'll say, well, I'm applying online. Okay. So this is sort of the common answers I get. And unfortunately, it's not the most, like the best recipe for success. So here's what actually gets people hired. The first thing, which most people don't spend enough time on, is research. The more information you can gather and equip yourself with, the more focused your job search can be. The second thing is networking, of course, but notice how much significance is placed on it in the second diagram versus the first diagram. The third thing, something called social proof. So what is social proof? Social proof are like public demonstrations of skill or competence. They might not be public, but they're proof of your skills in action. And I'm going to talk about and give you some examples of what that could look like. Another thing, referrals. So networking and referrals for me are different. Networking, is your whole network. But I don't think everybody in your network is going to be willing to put in a referral for you. And the last 2 things are those resumes and cover letters. Yes, they're important. Yes, they're part of job search, but probably not as important as most people think. You'll still need one, a good one, but it's not the be all and end all of job search. So what I'd like to do now is focus on the second diagram and the 6 strategies I've introduced here. And I'm going to go through each one in a little bit more detail, give you some tips and strategies that you can take away. Okay, so let's start with the first one, research. So when it comes to research, like I said, the more information you can gather and equip yourself with, the better. But what should you be looking for? Well, definitely we want to research the role and the company. What is it exactly about this position or this organization? Like, what are they looking for? What do they really want out of a candidate? Beyond that, you could also look at the team or the people that work there. Do I know anybody? Do I have any connections? Can I get introduced to them? Have we crossed paths before? How is the organization organized into departments or teams? And which one would I like to join? You also can research their products and services. Ultimately, you're going to be working with or delivering these, so start to get to know them, right? What are their top sellers? What are their main offerings? Are there any new products and services in the pipeline? You can research the company goals, their initiatives. What are they working on? Where do they want to be in the next 6, 12 to 18 months? And how can you play a part in that journey? You also might look at their problems or challenges. What's holding the organization back? What's a challenge that they're trying to overcome? You could look at COVID and say, how has COVID impacted this organization? And most people know to check out the company website, but I think that's the minimum expectation. So my last tip here is just to research using a variety of sources. So yes, you can check the website, but go beyond that. Look them up on social media, YouTube, maybe they have a Glassdoor page, but dig a little bit deeper. Read their annual reports. Talk to people in your network. What have they heard? Look them up online. Google, are they in the news, in the media for anything? Or you could look at more formal pieces of labor market information like knot codes, essential skills profiles, trades profiles. But the idea is to gather a lot of information so that you can have a really well-rounded picture here. Earlier, I said most people don't spend enough time on research. I don't have like an hours, like you must invest this many hours in research. But speaking from personal experience, I could easily say 10 to 20 hours of research going into applications. Some things to avoid I would say really just be relying on just job advertisements or just company websites. You don't need to memorize company histories or present historical facts about the organization. I would really like it to have a future focus. Where are they headed and how can you be a part of that journey? So that's research. The second topic is networking. So you've probably heard from many, many people that, networking is an important job search strategy. Yes, but that's not always the most effective advice. Like, how do I actually network? So the main focus for me is to focus on building relationships. Job offers don't go to the person who has the most contacts. It's not about collecting names or LinkedIn profiles or anything like that. It's about how many professional relationships do you have and what's their quality like. So how do we do this? Well, one way is through information interviews. If this is a new concept to anybody, basically it's a role reversal. In a traditional interview, the employer asks questions to you. In an information interview, you ask questions to the employer, right? You assume that leadership role. You reach out, organize the meeting, set the date and time, send the link, prepare the questions, and you interview the employer. It's a great way to get information. It's a great way to do research, but also they get to see you. Some other ways would be through like volunteering, obviously a great way to build your network and get outside of the typical circles that we run in. We like to stick to what's familiar. So volunteering will help get us out of that circle and hopefully meet some new contacts. But essentially it's about going to where the people are. So attending events, conferences, trainings, joining a club or a team or an association. These might not feel like networking, but if you go in with the right mindset, they can be extremely valuable in terms of standing out. And then I know these events aren't happening as much with COVID, so connecting online, and the place to do that would be LinkedIn. So yes, you can still develop professional relationships through an online platform like LinkedIn. A couple of other tips that I'd like to give people when it comes to networking is, number one, I would encourage you to pay attention as opposed to seeking attention. A lot of times people go on social media and it's, shining the spotlight or trying to get attention for themselves. If you pay attention to what's going on and can almost get involved or pay it forward or provide value, that's where the magic of networking really lies. It's not about how many views or how many likes you can get. Another approach or just thing to keep in mind, show them you know them. So, I get a decent amount of connection requests, and the people who take the time to write a message or say, hey, I saw you speak at this event. I'd love to connect and continue learning, or we met at this event and I'd love to stay in touch. Like, when you can add that personal touch, it sets the relationship on the right path. This goes for all things networking and all things job applications. If you can show an employer that you know what they're about, what are their goals, what are their challenges, how you can provide value to their team, that will automatically help you stand out in job search, because the majority of people aren't doing that. They're writing resumes and clicking send. Another tip will be to utilize the principle of reciprocity. Reciprocity is powerful. It comes from the root word is reciprocate, right? So basically, if I do something for you, you're going to want to reciprocate that back to me. So when it comes to networking, I'd encourage you to give first and give often. Too many times people approach networking from this transaction perspective, like, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? And that's the wrong approach. Give first, give often. And then what you're doing is you're building up that goodwill. And the next time that person who you helped has an opportunity, guess who's going to be top of mind? Yeah, it's you. So those are some tips around networking. Next up, referrals. So I want to differentiate between networking and referrals, right? Networking, it's great to have a big network, connected with lots of different people, but not everybody in that network is going to be willing to put in a referral for you. When it comes to referrals, I think there's sort of two different ways people can approach it. The first is sort of a passive approach, and this will work. It just maybe takes a little bit longer. But the overall goal is to have and to build a professional brand. If you can get known for something in your industry, people know that's your niche, that's your specialty, that we know what opportunities to refer you to. It might take some time. I know maybe as students or young professionals, this might not be clear yet, but as you grow in your career and you sort of niche a little bit, that message will become clear to you, and you can reinforce that message by sharing, your knowledge, your experiences, your accomplishments around a certain skill set or a certain knowledge base. When it comes to, reinforcing and communicating that brand, I think consistency is key. So for example, for me, this opportunity came to me by way of referral, right? They were looking for a speaker and somebody recommended me because they know this is my specialty. This is my wheelhouse. It's taken a while to build and reinforce that brand, but now passive referrals are coming in. The second way to utilize referrals is more of an active approach. And so what I would suggest doing here is just starting with a network audit. So basically, it's an evaluation of who you know. You could do this, set up an Excel table or a document or get out a notebook and start to identify some categories. Who do I know? Classmates, instructors, friends, relatives, coworkers, past coworkers, and start to list these people. If you could take it a step further and say, okay, how can these people help me? What companies do they work at? Who do they know that they could maybe introduce me to? Once you've done that network audit, then you can identify who your allies are, right? Who's somebody that I maybe know fairly well, is willing to help me, likes me. No, just kidding. But wouldn't really require that much work or effort to make a referral for me, and then ask for them. When it comes to asking for referrals, I would say be really specific with your asks. If they're too generic, like, can you help me find a job? Or do you know anybody I could talk to? Those are really big questions. people might be able to, but it's just too generic. I received a request from somebody that said, "Hey, Matt, I'm interested in a career in financial services. Do you know anybody at RBC that I could talk to?" And like, because their question was so specific, I was able to quickly answer and identify that person and make the connection. But if they just said, "Hey, could you help me with job search?" Like, technically the answer is yes, but I don't really know what you want or how to help you. So be specific. And then focus on providing value to those people. So if I introduce you to someone, great, provide value to them. Don't just try and take information or take resources, but contribute and provide that value first. Remember reciprocity, right? Give first and give often. So both approaches work. The passive one, might take a little bit of time. If you are looking to accelerate that, you could take a more active approach with seeking referrals. So the next topic is social proof. So this is sometimes a new topic for people. They might not have heard of this, but basically these are demonstrations, examples, tangible, I want to say tangible accomplishments that we could share with employers. And the beautiful thing about social proof is really you're limited by your creativity. At the end of the day here, what I'm saying is you're not limited to a 1-page, 2-page resume and a 1-page cover letter. You can send an employer anything you want that helps support your application or just makes you look good. So what are some samples of social proof? Well, portfolios would be a classic example. Whether those are hard copy or digital, totally up to you, but a great way to demonstrate your skills. Testimonials, references from people. If you can get somebody else to write a recommendation or provide a testimonial about the services they provided from you or the accomplishments you achieved while working somewhere, those are powerful. Employers don't ask for reference letters all that much anymore. It's more like LinkedIn recommendations or comments and posts online that catch attention now. If you're tech savvy, maybe you set up your own personal website or you create a blog. There's basically an online space where you can demonstrate, where you can display samples of your work. LinkedIn, of course, perfect place. It is basically an online portfolio. What it allows you to manage so many aspects of job search, right? There's networking, there's photos and videos and documents and posts and texts and articles. So really, again, you're only limited by your own creativity. Those are all the things you can do on LinkedIn, or if you just have soft copy files on your computers that you can PDF and send to an employer. There's nothing wrong with that. A little bit more work, but can be a powerful job search tool, something called a proof of value project or like a pitch deck. Basically, this is a research project where you identify a challenge or a problem that the employer is having, and you just proactively come up with a solution. Or if you have an innovative idea that you think will help the organization, put together a little summary, put together a few slides, and send that off with your application. Yes, it's a bit of work, and yes, it might result in nothing, but at least you've done something unique, and you have that project that you can use for many more applications. It's not always just for one specific employer. Academic projects are great, any types of assignments, projects, presentations you've been involved in, and then of course your internships, placements, practicums, co-ops. These are all ways to provide social proof to an employer. Basically anything that you can provide to back up the statements on your resume is worth considering. Okay. So I hope I've sort of got the wheels turning a little bit, and people are thinking about what they can do to supplement their resume and cover letter. So speaking of resumes and cover letters, I do want to touch on them a little bit because I know most people have questions about them. So hopefully I can address a few points now. So you've probably heard this, but I want to reinforce the message. One quick and easy way to stand out in job search is to target your applications. If you're just creating one resume and sending it off to every single employer, you're not going to stand out. Employers who read applications on a daily basis are very good at identifying who took time to read the job ad and who just quickly applied. By reading the job ad, by taking time to reflect, you can highlight what is most relevant to that employer. When an employer reads a resume, it should be a really positive experience for them. Like, yes, nice, good, fantastic, let's call them, right? Like that should be their reactions. And by targeting, you can do that. But if you're just listing off random accomplishments that are not really related to the job and the employer has to look for things, it's just too much work for them. Including examples and accomplishments as well as keywords. So again, it all reverts back to targeting your application and reading the job ad. But if you can include those examples and accomplishments, which means if a job asks for effective communication skills, great. Give me an example of a time you communicated effectively. Or if it says leadership skills, okay, tell me about an accomplishment where you led a team or a project or something. And then keywords. The employers speak the language. They speak the industry language. You should too. So they can tell if somebody really knows their stuff, if they know the role by the language they use. A couple other ways to stand out, using numbers. So numbers are a great way to quantify your work. They're also really hard to misunderstand, right? If you said led a team of 10, I know what 10 people looks like and what that takes. If you said, managed a project worth $200,000, I know how much that is and the scope of that project. So numbers are a great way. Also, they draw the reader's eye in. People just want to see, oh, what's this number? The last two are pretty obvious. Keep things consistent and no spelling and grammar errors. So. Okay, and the last one, cover letters. I know not everybody loves cover letters. I'm one of those unique individuals who really enjoys writing cover letters. A lot of the advice here will be similar to resumes, but there's a few unique points as well. So number one, got to target cover letters to the jobs, to the employers. Employers can smell a copy paste or a template cover letter within a second. So do yourself a favor, don't use templates. And another tip I'll give you is you don't need to repeat or summarize the information in your resume. Resume is about you and your past. Great, let's keep it that way. The way I coach people to write cover letters is to make them about the employer and about the future. And that allows you to just take a totally different perspective, write with a totally different tone. So when you sit down to write a cover letter, my advice is you think about and answer these three questions. Number one, why do you want this job? Right? You could choose any job to apply for. Why this one? What makes this role unique? What makes this employer special? Number two, how can you help them? The majority of cover letters I see are focused on the job seeker. They'll say things like, this job is great for me. It'll help me build my skills, use my training, grow my career. And the employer reads that and goes, well, good for you, but what do we get? Right? So instead of writing about yourself, write about how you can help the employer. This is where your research will help. If you can speak to that, fantastic. Not only does it demonstrate research, but it demonstrates that you can come in and provide value. The third question, what steps will you take to achieve it? So here's how I can help you, and this is how I'm going to implement my plan, or these are the steps I'm going to take to achieve that outcome. And by presenting the steps, you're showing the employer that, look, I'm going to come in with a game plan. I am ready to go. I've thought about this and I'm ready to contribute, as opposed to someone who sits back and says, please train me. You can also use your cover letter for other reasons, sharing new or relevant information. So you don't need to repeat anything from your resume. You might paraphrase a little bit, but let's say you know somebody that works at the organization, or you did a work placement there. We want to highlight that. Focus on that relationship, on that connection. It builds trust really quickly. You could also explain any potential red flags. So if you have a gap on your resume, if you're looking for a job in another city, if you're maybe changing careers or changing industries, anticipate those questions from the employer and take a minute, take a paragraph to address them. By proactively addressing those questions, not only do you control the narrative, but now it's on the table and the employer has no reason to be concerned. The last two, pretty straightforward. Keep consistent, right? When I look at a resume and a cover letter, it should be clear these are from the same candidate. If they're different fonts or different colors, that can be confusing. And of course, limit no spelling and grammar errors. Employers know that you spent a lot of time, hours, writing these documents. They should be error-free. So if you're comfortable, editing, fantastic. But you can absolutely, and I would encourage you to get a second set of eyes on it, get somebody to read it, and give you feedback on it. Okay. So we're doing pretty good for time. Those were all of the tips and strategies I wanted to share in terms of standing out in job search. And now we can open it up to some questions. We've got a good chunk of time here. You can put them in the chat, or yeah, let me just scroll through the chat here and see. Okay, question here from someone. Are you using Jobscan? I am aware of Jobscan. If you're referring to their analyzer, where you paste a job ad in one side and you paste your resume in the other to search for keywords and make sure there's a match. I don't use it all that frequently. I think it's maybe a good starter tool. What I usually do around keywords is I will look at multiple job postings for a certain position. So let's say you want to be, I don't know, an accountant or a project manager. I would look at multiple job ads for those postings and see what type of terms and vocabulary are used most frequently by multiple employers. If you are targeting one resume to one job ad, then Jobscan is an option. But if you're writing sort of a more industry-focused resume, then I would like to compare more postings than just the one. Okay, so just going to open up the Q&A. So The question is, I'm an international student pursuing a degree where I don't have co-op opportunities. Can you please give me tips on how to get into the hidden job market? Sure. So I will just answer that live. Yes. Yeah, so I understand not all programs have co-op opportunities as part of the course offerings. In terms of getting into the hidden job market, I would say start by thinking about situations that you're comfortable in or that you excel at. So I don't want to prescribe, large networking events if you're a more quiet, reserved, shy individual, right? So assess yourself and see, how do you prefer to communicate with people? Is it written word? Is it over the phone, email? Is it in person? Once you sort of have a sense of the type of communication you're more comfortable with, then I would look for networking opportunities that allow you to use those skills. I think networking is an essential part of job search, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to networking events, right? There's lots of different ways to build those relationships. Other ways to access the hidden job market would be starting with your current network and seeing if they can do the heavy lifting for you, right? Asking for those referrals or those introductions to decision makers, hiring managers, influencers. And another tip I'll give you actually is start small. If somebody comes to me and says, could you introduce me to professionals in human resources? I mean, yeah, but I know like lots of people. So put a number on it. Could you introduce me to 2 people? And all of a sudden that becomes a much more manageable request for me. But for you, if you continue to do that, 2 people, right, becomes 4 people, becomes 8 people, and it grows exponentially. Another question here. Question is, I'm an alum and going through a career redeciding exploration. I like that word. Any resources you could share that specifically address redeciders and industry shifts? Good question. So anytime I think you're navigating a career transition or, reevaluating your paths, again, that self-reflection piece is usually where I would start, some sort of self-assessment. There are free assessment tools online. I know the acronym for one, it's called VIA, V-I-A, and the full explanation or definition is escaping me at the moment. But I'm sure if you look up VIA assessment, that's you'll get to that page. Another resource to look at would be labor market information. So what industries are experiencing growth and demand, and what what industries might be experiencing contraction or downsizing at the moment. I know things are a little bit uncertain still with COVID and the pandemic, but getting a sense of what industries, there's a long, lucrative future in would be another good step. And then lastly, I would say talk to people. Don't feel like you have to do this all on your own. Those information interviews are a great way to sort of peek behind the curtain and see what happens in these organizations. So if you've got a handful of ideas, start reaching out to people and having those conversations and say, hey, I'm trying to decide what career path to pursue next. Like, you have this experience. I'd love to hear how you got there or your take on it. So yeah, don't shy away from having those conversations with people in the field. Another question here. I think when you spoke about reciprocity, when it comes to networking, can you provide some examples of how that would work for a student? What sort of give can they provide to a practicing professional? Oh, great question. I know I get this question asked in different ways and shapes and forms quite often. People think, I'm a student, like what value could I possibly provide? You're the professional, right? But there is value that you could provide. So I'll give you a couple examples. One would be engaging with content on LinkedIn or social media. Any professional who's putting out content, putting out posts on LinkedIn, they like people to engage with that content and not just clicking the like button, but commenting, sharing, contributing to the conversation. LinkedIn thrives on engagement. So you can provide value by engaging with other professionals' posts. Now, that works two ways. You provide value to them, the value being their posts get seen by more people. And you can also provide value to yourself because now you're demonstrating your knowledge, your competency, your communication skills with this person who has the potential to, influence or further your career path. So that's one way. Another one would be, thanks, Teddy, for the link in the chat there, values in action inventory. Another way you can provide value to people, like students have the most up-to-date current training and education in things. So if you have an innovative idea, feel free to suggest it. Write an article, put together a pitch deck or a small presentation and see if you can send it out and share it to people. I have a link to a YouTube video about a young student who did that and immediately got a call from the VP of hiring to talk about this. So it's a little bit of work, yes, but you can definitely provide that value to people. And another one is just connecting people in your network. So a lot of times if I see, somebody has this set of interests and another person in my network has similar interests, but those two people aren't connected, I'll just introduce them and say, hey, you guys clearly have the same interests. You would probably get along. And now both of them I've provided value to two people, and now hopefully those two people will have my back when it comes to job search. So a few examples. Good question here. The question is, should you put fully vaccinated on your resume? Very timely question. At the moment, I don't consider that to be a requirement or a best practice. I have heard rumors of people doing it, but I don't think that, we want to get into the habit of disclosing health information on our resumes. That might come up. Yeah, it's too personal. That might come up at some point in the hiring process, depending on where you're applying. For example, if you apply for a job at the University of Manitoba, everybody's fully aware that you need to be fully vaccinated, right? To be working on campus. So I think you'd know whether the employer requires that probably before you apply. And you can make your application decisions based on that. So no, I don't think you need to put it on your resume. Another question here. Could we set the reverse interviews with, how could we set reverse interviews with prospective companies? So yeah, good question. I'm glad you're interested in the information interview strategy. So it takes a little bit of work. I mean, researching the individual that you would like to speak with, drafting the message and the correspondence, and setting that all up. I think in the message, some tips around it would be keep it brief. I don't need a full letter document. Most people, have enough emails coming through their inbox. So a brief message, sort of an introduction of who you are, what you're looking for from them. So I would really like advice on XYZ, and be specific with how much time you want from them. I wouldn't ask for that much. 15 to 20 minutes would be, an easy yes or no for somebody. If you start asking for 30 or 60 minutes, that's cutting out a significant chunk of someone's day. So 15, 20 minutes, and respect that. So, let's say the interview happens and, you're coming up on the end of your session. Say, I just want to be mindful of your time. Thank you. Is it possible to maybe schedule a follow-up or send you some follow-up questions via email? Those are for cold contacts. If you can, get your network and your current contacts to do the heavy lifting for you. See if they can introduce you to someone and say, hey, do you know anybody that I could talk to or would be willing to do an information interview with me? And they can make that warm handoff for you. Okay, I got my 1-minute warning. There are no more questions in the Q&A. So yeah, I just want to throw up one last slide that just says thank you to the University of Manitoba and to the attendees for taking time out of their day to speak with me or to listen to me here. And yeah, if you have any questions or want to connect online, you can find me on LinkedIn or at the email on the screen. So enjoy the rest of homecoming. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for delivering an informative and thought-provoking presentation, Matt. And thank you everybody for joining us today and asking some great questions. Matt is actually returning in November to deliver a couple more webinars to support our lifelong learning program. On November 2nd, he's going to be sharing outside the box job search strategies. And on the 30th, it'll be everything we need to know about creating online portfolios. You can register right now if you'd like. I've just put the link in the chat, or you can expect an email invitation in the next few weeks for that. One final comment before we sign off. Homecoming is just getting started and we have a full slate of programming for everybody in our community. Check out our website and you'll see there's really something for everybody between now and Saturday. One event that's shaping up to be a heck of a lot of fun is Trivia Night, our homecoming edition, this Friday at 7 p.m. Lots of fun prizes, including some of our new alumni branded swag and gift cards to alumni-owned businesses. And I will post the details for that in the chat as well and encourage you all to check it out. So thank you so much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day.